31 Nights of Halloween.
You're listening to 13 Past Midnight with Steve Stockton.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back once again. I'm Steve Stockton. You're listening to 13 Past Midnight, and we're up to day 13 in our 31 Nights of Halloween. Almost halfway. Hang in there, everybody. Tonight, Cisco Murdoch returns with part 2 of her wonderfully creepy story, The Strange Case of Cabin 22.
The Strange Case of Cabin 22, Part 2. Dave was deep into the Chapter 2 of The Whistler. This really was turning out to be a good book, he thought, and he reached into the bag for a pork rind, almost made it halfway to his mouth, and thought he had lost count on the 2 for me and 1 for Rage's share. Sorry, boy. Here you go. He extended the snack toward his buddy and looked over the book towards Rage. He noticed a look he had seen before, and he slowly lowered the book and connected look to look with the dog. He gave a quick chin-up motion to Rage, a signal they both knew as a "what's up?" He also almost mindlessly dropped the pork rind and slowly started to reach for the 12-gauge lying to his right along the back of the couch. Rage was slowly gesturing with his eyes to behind Dave, back at Dave, then behind him to Dave's right again. Dave understood. Slowly he held up his left hand, palm out, to a hold position, and Rage did just that. The dog went into full on-duty mode and locked his eyes on whatever he saw behind Dave. Dave reached the shotgun and in one moment rolled off the couch onto his knees and had the 12-gauge pointed at the same direction. Rage followed suit and took his position by his friend's side, paused forward and locked in. "Go, boy," he whispered, and Rage took off full tilt boogie toward the large picture window. Silent but deadly, Dave caught a glimpse of a large, dark figure pulling away from the glass and back off onto the porch. "Let him have it, Rage." The dog burst into a barking, growling warning that probably meant, "That's right, you son of a bitch, run!" Dave went to the door, opened it with one hand, and the 12-gauge pointed, and kicked the screen door. It banged against the back of the cabin, and Rage ran out barking and sniffing at the window, followed the scent down the porch floor, and directly to the railing on the back end of the porch. Dave followed the direction of his partner with the weapon, slowly moved toward the railing Rage was inhaling, and stared into the nothingness. My God, he thought, covering his left and right, down and then back again, with his gaze and the business end of the 12-gauge. Where'd he go, boy? Rage was silent and acting like he lost the scent. His head poked through the railing and looked down. Dave stopped for a second and listened. No anything. No rustle of leaves. No sounds of any kind, except an owl off in the distance. Dave looked down as far as the moonlight would offer and saw nothing. Easing the weapon to his side, he pet his friend's head, and they both just stood there in silence a moment. He had seen something big, something dark in that window. He glanced back now, doing his best to calculate the size. It had filled in the better part of the center of that huge picture window, he thought, and almost clear to its top. 6'4", 6'5", maybe? And wide. But the drop-off this porch was pretty damn steep and loaded with nature's security alarm, dried leaves. He moved to the side and looked down. Even here, there was nowhere to silently climb up. "Hold, boy." And Rage sat, on duty for sure now. Dave quick went inside, grabbed up the mag light he had brought, and put it in his back pocket, and grabbed the large Coleman spotlight he had. He joined Rage, and together they watched the light as it illuminated the trees and surrounding area. Nothing, not a damn thing. Just the darn owl off in the distance again. What the hell? Okay, boy, inside. They both went in, and Rage went back to the inside window, sniffing. Seemed like he was trying his best to figure out this too. "Stay here, boy. I got this next part. Gonna go look around." He in no way wanted Rage to run after this, whatever it was, and spend the night chasing after them both. He slowly walked around the perimeter of the little cabin outside. When he went as far as he could onto the porch, he quick turned on the light. He held with the aim of the gun, directed at what he could see under the balcony of the porch. Rocks, sticks, of course leaves, and 2 Pabst Blue Ribbon cans faded with time. Slobs, he thought. As he made his way back inside, Rage was seated just inside the screen door and greeted him as if he had been gone a month. "Okay, boy, I know. And it made him smile. It always did. "I don't know what the hell is going on around here, Rage, but thanks for the heads up, buddy. Let's go lock her down and settle in. What do you say?" They made the rounds from window to window, door to door on the inside, checking all the locks. Satisfied, he laid the 12-gauge on the couch and pushed the couch against the far wall, moved a little table from the corner, and shoved the couch there. He sat down, put the weapon on his lap, and leaned back. Better now, his back to the wall. Front door to his left, kitchen, picture window, back door, left center, doorway to the bedrooms, right center, and a solid wall behind him. Good. Odd how that always made him feel better. And for a moment he remembered watching an old Western as a kid. Wild Bill Hickok always took the chair with his back to the wall, and Dave never forgot this, always requesting the table with the best view of the entrance and his back to a corner. Honestly, he didn't know why he hadn't moved the couch to start with. He hadn't been himself lately. He was indeed coming back, though. And he looked up at Rage, who hadn't really gone into vacation mode, and he was very grateful for that. Rage now sat, straight up, in all his shepherd beauty, tongue goofy hanging to one side. He caught Dave's eyes and attention, and Dave gave him the "what's up" chin. And Rage looked down, then back up at Dave. Dave noticed Rage was sitting in a whirlwind of spilt pork rinds on the floor, and Dave said, "Go ahead, buddy. They're all yours." Rage jumped up and happily ate every single one. Dave got a beer, picked up the Grisham novel that had skidded across the floor, and looked one more time out the window. What the hell is going on around here? And how many times have I said that? We haven't even been here a day. I just don't know what's going on. And then he turned back to Rage, who had his spot now on the couch. You got that right, buddy. We could use some sleep. Jeb Perkins cut the lights off on his old Chevy pickup when he turned down the dirt road. He could drive this road blind, and if blind running drunk counted, he had. He'd take the next quarter mile by moonlight and memory, keeping prying eyes off him what he'd been up to. Only reason no one finds out what you up to is people don't get a chance to find out. Jeb's daddy used to tell him as a boy, and more than Jeb liked, his dead father's voice lived inside his head every day. Only way 3 people can keep a secret is that 2 of them are dead. You hear me, boy? These words were often echoed by a slap in the face, or Jeb getting knocked to the floor with his dad's size 13 work boot, and once, just for flavor and style, a punch to the gut that made Jeb sore enough to hide out in these caves for 2 days, coming out only to scrounge up some grub. You don't let nobody in your business, and you sure as hell don't let nobody in mine. He remembered, as if it was yesterday, and was proud in his 47th year that he had kept his dad's secret, and he kept his too. He had told his friend Skeet that the old man was hard, and he was an old cuss, but he's just trying to steer him right in an even harder world. Jeb was sure Skeet had bought this bullshit. He wasn't so sure about himself. He reached the little hill and just cut the engine and let the old Chevy roll to her stop, and the darkness hugged them both. The canopy off the dirt road was thick here, the underbrush and briar better. Jeb stepped out the truck, stood a second, and took out a hand-rolled bugle cigarette, one of 5 he allowed himself a day. He took a deep drag in like it was more than just tobacco, and felt the low-grade contents grab at his throat. Don't you wince, boy. Wincing is for sissy kids and losers. Which one are you? He shook off his father's echoes from the past, pulled the camo net out of the back of the pickup, and covered the truck. When he finished, he grabbed the 2 burlap bags of Farmer Bartlett's best corn out of the back of the truck and disappeared into the thicket of the hidden trail. Rage was snoring, laying on Dave's leg, and Dave's leg was most assuredly asleep, and he wished he was too. He glanced at his watch, one of the few people who still wore one, and it was pushing 2 a.m. And he was no closer to sleep than he had been an hour ago. He tried reading his novel, but every 2 sentences he'd catch himself looking toward the window. He reached out to the small table and grabbed the transistor radio he had brought. No doubt there would be no signals out here, but it was worth a try. He had seen a 48 news tower on the side of the mountain on his way up. There was a large building and another sign proudly stating, Home of Doppler Radar, with a smiling anchor, his sleeves rolled up like he was on the case for you. Dave chuckled and flicked on the radio.
Can't have me. Nope. Mr. Pop. Eat.
He turned the signal dial, and a man came through the speakers in mid-speech. I say to you, the Lord don't want your money. The Lord don't want your promises. He wants your heart, your soul, and your devotion. This last part broke into drawn-out syllables. Devotion. Dave turned the channel, his raged open one eye. I know, boy, me either, and smiled. Hank Williams was just finishing Your Cheatin' Heart, and Dave didn't stick around to see what was next. He wasn't used to country music yet, loved some of it, but you had to be in the mood. He turned the dial, hitting spots ranging from white noise to crossover broadcasts. He found a woman talking in a soft accent for just a moment. She laid her hand on a gun, tears streaming down her face. Wow, a play of some kind? Maybe. And the white noise took over. He did his best to dial it back in. Just then, over the white noise, a distinctively different voice came through. A southern male voice, low and guttural, and clear, came over the white noise. They killed me. Give it back. Why? Why? Dave startled at this and stared at the small radio like a face would appear on its surface. None did. Rage lifted his head to look at Dave. He waited, tried tuning the dial again. It must be part of the play. Neither he nor Rage believed that, and Dave turned it off. He laid his head back to ponder all that had happened in this little cabin in this such a short amount of time they had been there. He drifted off to sleep, thinking over the day's events. One sack on his back, one dragging slightly to his left, a penlight in his mouth, Jeb struggled forward. The cave entrance was tight here, but he knew a few more feet and it would open wider, and he could stretch the ache in his back. There were other entrances to tunnels in here, too. Back when he was a boy, he could fit in some of them, and ran in them all day long, hiding things here and there, little treasures he had collected no one knew about. Caves were his, the tunnels were his, and it opened up to him like a wondrous world. One, when he was younger, was so tight he'd had to crawl on his belly like a snake. Oh, but it was worth it, 'cause it opened into a huge spot, even had a bit of a natural lake in there. Bats and other animals would gather there, and that was okay. It was all his then, and that tunnel had a break in it that ran clear through the other side of this mountain and came out behind some wild muscadine bushes, all hidden like by what was now called that dead children's playground off by the RV park and the garage he worked at. That place made him shudder, and he did so now. These tunnels were like a friend to Jeb, and he knew them well. He came to a turn, and he could stand up now. Off in the distance he could see a light shining dimly from his destination. He could also hear Elvis echoing slightly from ahead. "Damn, Skeet," he said angrily. "I told him to keep that racket down." And he pressed on. He emerged to find Skeet sitting on the old green couch he had made with orange crates and stolen lawn chair cushions. The colors of the flowers now faded, but odd in such a dank and dismal cave. Skeet was loading what he called his Widowmaker, a steel slingshot he had made down at the garage, and he had a bag of what Jeb was sure was steel ball bearings in front of him, sitting on an overturned crate covered with a rusty sheet metal. "Well, hey there, boy. Thought you'd never make it up here tonight." He greeted Jeb, and Jeb dropped the 2 bags of corn in a steel drum and banged the lid on with a mallet that had sat by its side. "Skeet, I done told you to keep that noise down," and nodded toward the transistor radio. "But that's Elvis, man. You can't turn down Elvis." "Damn it, Skeet, you'll bring the law down on us for sure. Now turn it down." "Sure, you old worrywart. Ain't no one finding us up in here. Why, I'm betting no one but us and your old daddy been in here for 100 years and more." Skeet pulled the steel ball back, closed one eye, and let go. Whomp! The ball bearing flew through the air and made a direct hit into the head of a huge rat scurrying across the top of the steel shelves they had built about 10 years back. It hit so hard, it threw the rat up and back and hit a poster of the centerfold of Dorothy Stratton, duct taped to the plywood wall behind the shelves. Splat! The rat's blood sprayed all over Dorothy's smiling face and slid down the poster, leaving a trail, and hit the floor. "Skeet! Oh, God, not Dorothy!" Jeb ran up, pulled a sleeve of his flannel over his hand, and wiped the blood off Dorothy's face, making it worse, also making him think of how this beauty had died at the hands of her crazy husband. "I'm sorry, Jeb. I told you I'd take care of these rats. There's so many. Traps ain't doing the job. I'm getting right good. Look at there." Jeb looked where he had pointed, and a pile of rats lay in a twisted nest of blood, guts, and gore. "Jesus, man!" Jeb took off his old greasy ball cap and wiped his forehead. "Be careful with that thing, will you? And get those rats out of here when you leave, and be more mindful of my girls, will you?" Jeb was proud of his collection of centerfolds. They covered the makeshift walls within the cave, from top to bottom. He had Pamela Anderson next to his dad's old Betty Page, and Anna Nicole next to a Farrah Fawcett he'd liked as much as his old daddy did. Shannon and Kelly and Kim Kardashian glorified the walls behind his daddy's still, and swayed sometimes when the mash got hot and steamed. Drew Barrymore smiled at him from above the sugar barrels, with her little butterfly tattoo. Marilyn was everywhere, and those he had put behind plastic poster frames he had got special on a run into town with his dad and Uncle Dean before he died, when he was just a boy. The room was covered in his girls, and stacks of old Wee and Hustler Playboys filled the room, and shelves, along with the cases of mason jars, and steel barrels of sugar and cracked corn, and large water jugs among their beauty. It was his daddy's collection, and he had kept it a-going, as well as the family's business of being shiners. Bringing Skeet into this was not something he was comfortable with, but he needed the help. "You checked those car batteries up the tunnel like I told you?" I did. Changed all 3 out, hooked up the charged ones like you said." A makeshift exhaust system lined the far-off tunnel, heading away from the entrance. Small box fans and car batteries carried the smoke off and away to another exit on the far side of this cave. It worked fine to keep things flowing and the smoke out, but it still got damn hot in here when things got a-brewing. I brought in the sugar, too. It's there in the drum. And Skeet nodded toward the stash. She yielding good? Jeb reached down and picked up a mason jar filled with his dad's recipe, shook it and held it up, and watched the beads form on its top. Hell yes, just like she should, he smiled. I got to get this out to our buyer tomorrow. Truck all packed? Packed and ready. Just the last few cases to go. Truck's out in a spot, covered up like you taught me. Alrighty then. I'm counting on you. Payday's Friday, and this'll be a good one. Jeb set the jar back down in its wooden case and checked the still. It was a mix of the original his dad built and parts he had to fix himself. Welding was a favorite part of being a mechanic down at the garage, and he was good at it. He ran a finger down the copper tubing and thought about the years this old girl had fed him and his family. All of them gone now. Just me and you left, Sally. His dad's name for the still. Out of all his girls, she was his favorite of all. Okay, Skeet, you get those rats out of here. Keep your eye on Sally, and I'll be back in the morning. Before I open that garage, I gotta go finish that John Deere for Hampton, and he's gonna give us a cut on the corn for the next batch. Skeet leaned in and took a shot at another intruder. Whomp! This one sprayed blood on Jeb's jeans and landed on the jars of the shine. Jesus, Skeet, you gotta clean that up now. He swatted at the rat blood on his leg with his shirt sleeve again and grimaced. Get those traps running, will you? Sorry, Jeb. Skeet grabbed up some rags and started toward the jars. And don't you dare drink no shine tonight. I need you watching Sally. Okay, Jeb, Skeet said as he wiped down the jars. I'm all over it, and you can count on me. You know that, Jeb. You can count on me. All right, then. Skeet grabbed an empty crate, and he started to pick up the rats by the tail and put them in it. I'll be back in a couple of hours. Jeez, that's gross. And, well, have a couple of days off when we get this finished, okay? Skeet smiled up at Jeb, holding the rat by the tail. Blood dripped from its mouth, and Jeb shuddered, pulled the penlight from his pocket, and ducked off into the tunnel and toward fresh air. Skeet dropped the rat into the crate, wiped his hands on his jeans legs, and sat down on the couch, reached down under the metal sheet table top, and pulled out a jar, unscrewed the lid, turned up the radio, and drank to Travis Trent, singing, "Here's a quarter. Call someone who cares." Jeb uncovered his truck and eased up the road, not turning on his lights till he reached the road away from the cave. He felt a little off, a little skittish maybe, but he had a job to do at the garage, and he shook off the feeling and lit up another bugler. Halfway to the garage, he felt he needed to drain the snake, as he called it, and pulled over, got out, and walked off to the wood line, unzipped his jeans, and marveled at the relief he felt with this simple task. He watched hot piss run down the bush in front of him when he heard a growl. He froze in his place, and it came again from in front of him and within the thickness of the trees. A low, rumbling growl now, and Jeb looked toward it, squinting to see in the shadows. A bear. bear? What, a wolf, maybe? He hadn't seen one ever out here, but he had heard tell. Just then he saw the shape of what looked like a large dog in the thicket. He swore he could see the glare of its teeth and a glint of an eye. He was frozen as he looked at the shape in the shadows. He was frozen right to the spot. "Jesus, that's huge," he whispered, and the form moved closer. The snapping of sticks echoed its entrance into Jeb's space. And then it stood up. It was a dog, but not a dog, a wolf face, but stood like a man. Jeb's hypnotic trance broke when it opened its mouth in a snarl that made his blood run cold, and Jeb broke into a backwards run, almost fell, and banged into the passenger side of his truck. Quick opened the door, leaped in, and slid over, threw it into drive, and took off as this thing from the woods grazed its hand across the door, leaving a screeching sound of nails and metal. Jeb, sweating and hauling ass, looked at the side view mirror to see a massive abomination of man and beast leap back onto the cover of the wood in 2 big leaps. He had also pissed himself. As Dave and Rage finally slept, a few cabins down, George awoke to his wife Greta next to him, thrashing around as if in mid-nightmare. She was talking in her sleep, and it was sounding like nonsense to him, but he had learned to listen to her when she did this. They had been married 35 years, and Greta often had prophetic dreams, sometimes even telling him of things to come, warnings and such. Once she told him where he had packed the life insurance papers, and they were there, right where she said in her sleep, and Greta had not been anywhere near his office when he packed it up and retired. But there they were. The next day, Greta had no memory of ever saying a thing. George sat up on one elbow and leaned in, trying hard to hear what she was saying now. Greta spoke with a whisper. "Rougarou, Rougarou, Rougarou." You have been listening to The Strange Case of Cabin 22, Part 2. If you haven't caught the prequel, The Cabin, you'll find it on 13 Past Midnight's YouTube channel. Also, Part 1. Stay tuned to 13 Past Midnight to find out what happens in the cabin village atop this beautiful mountain. Will Dave and Rage encounter more ghostly going on in the cabin? Mark 22. What was that scared Jeb so much? What was Greta saying in her sleep? Was this just gibberish or a harbinger of danger to come? Who else is on this mountain? Tune in for Part 3 and let's find out together. Part of 13 Past Midnight's 31 Days of Halloween. Oh, and Happy Halloween.
As always, Cisco, that was amazing. I'm anxious for Part 3 and see where all this is leading to. Thanks again for doing that story just for us. That's a 13 Past Midnight exclusive, everyone. Just for the 31 Nights of Halloween. All right, that's going to take us up to the break, folks. Stay tuned for more. You're listening to 13 Past Midnight. I'm your host, Steve Stockton, and we'll be right back.